Hello, welcome back to Rare Reads and this video about some of my favourite short stories. I'm not going to rank them. This is not like a top 5 or top 10 or anything like that. The Guardian just did their top 100 books, which has been very controversial. I think it's even harder to, come up with a list for short stories because there's more of them. I have read a lot of short stories. I've studied a lot of short stories. I studied short stories at school and then on my Access course at college and then on both of my degrees. I've written a few as well on my master's and on my my degree course as well. So this is just some of my favourite ones really, and in no particular order. I'm going to start with a short story called The School. I read this on my MA. I had to do a lot of Googling to find this. It's called The School. It's by somebody called Donald Barthelme. I think that's how you say his name. This story was first published in the 70s, 1974, in the New Yorker magazine. You can still read it on the New Yorker magazine, but you have to pay on there. But you can get it for free if you just Google the Library of America, The School, Donald Barthelme. You will find that story on there and you can read it. So you can read it for yourself. I would highly recommend that you go and do that. It is a very dark comic story, about school pets. And spoiler coming, warning, spoiler alert, they all die. It's just a story about all these school pets that die. And it's just told in a very deadpan kind of voice. That's what I really love about, me, I love something blackly, darkly comic. So that is my first rec, and I would, highly recommend it. It's one of those that it really got in my head, and stayed with me. And like I say, I did have to Google I couldn't remember I thought it was called Pets, not The School, actually. So I was Googling trying to find pets. It's awful when you can't find a short story. I think it's much harder to find short stories than it is to find novels. If you've forgotten the title or whatever. But so that's my first rec. I think I read it in an American short story collection or something like that. But just go on the Library of America and just read it for free. Next one is another American one. I think they're nearly all American, sorry. Is in this collection by Carol Shields. And it's the title story from this collection. This was a Pulitzer Prize winning collection. So the book is called Various Miracles, the collection, and the third short story in this collection is called Various Miracles. And I'll just read you kind of the opening bit of it. It's a kind of high concept thing. So it's about coincidences, basically. It is a story all about coincidence. So it starts off, several of the miracles that occurred this year have gone unrecorded. Example, on the morning of the January the 3rd, 7 women stood in line at a lingerie sale in Palo Alto, California, and by chance, each of these women bore the Christian name Emily. Example, on February the 16th, 4 strangers, 3 men, 1 woman, sat quietly reading on the backseat of the number 10 bus in Cincinnati, Ohio. Each of them was reading a paperback copy of Smiley's People. So that you get the idea. It's just kind of a list of all of these coincidences. It really made me think. It really made me kind of go and Google if any of these things actually did happen. I can't remember if that was the case or not now. I love anything like this. I just love bizarre real life, things. It just fascinate me anyway. So I was all in straight away when I, as soon as I started reading it. Interesting thing. So I highly recommend this story, and I think I enjoyed the whole collection. I've kept it, so that always says something. But this is interesting. So this is a secondhand book. You can see there the kind of secondhand sticker on it, from Thrift Books is where it came from, over the internet. But here's an interesting thing. So when I picked this up and started looking for Various Miracles this morning, I noticed that there's a story called Scenes on page 95 with some stars next to it. They are not my stars. I don't draw stars like that. So obviously the person that had this book before me thought that Scenes, that story, deserved some stars. So, and she didn't start, and they didn't start anything else. So maybe check that one out as well. Might be worth doing. I couldn't really remember it. I went and had a quick look at it this morning. Couldn't really remember it. But actually when I started, I sort of reread some bits of it, skim read it again. And it is a good story as well. It's just about fragments of somebody's life and how, you know, that is what makes us, isn't it? Kind of these little snippets, these little scenes from a life sort of thing, make up a life. So there you go. Carol Shields, Various Miracles, highly recommend. Next one then, Bartleby the Scrivener. And this is an old story written by Herman Melville. I had to Google this morning his first name. I knew it was Melville. I was like, is it Henry? I knew it began with a H. Herman Melville, can't even say it now. Herman Melville wrote this. It's the longest short story. I think it is more bordering on a novella, I think, from memory. It's a while ago since I read this. I think somebody recommended it to me when I was at university, I think. It's about a guy called Bartleby, who is a scrivener, which is a, you know, scribe, like Bob Cratchit in, no, he's not, he's an accountant. I don't know why I said that. Forget that. A cleric, you know. And he just, one day his boss asks him to do something and he just goes, I'd rather not. And he just kind of politely declines to do anything that's asked of him. But basically shirks all of his responsibilities. But because he does it in such a very polite way, nobody can really argue with that, really. And I just think we should all be a bit more Bartleby, really. I just think we should all do that, you know. I'd rather not. Somebody asks you to do something, you think it's a waste of time, you think it's a bit bullshit, just go, I'd rather not, but in a very polite way. I just love the sentiment of it. It's like punk before punk existed. Yeah, highly recommend that, and you can read that for free as well online. You can get it on Project Gutenberg because it's really old now. It's over 100 years old now. Highly recommend that. Next up is another American. I've just realised they're all American. Sorry. I'll have to do another one at some point where they're not my non-American favourite. I just love American fiction. So this is called The Figure Over the Town. It's by William Goyen. And I read this on my MA, so it's like probably 2 or 3 years ago when I read this story. I mentioned it when I was doing one of my other videos a few videos back, and I then went to try and read it again, try and find it, and I couldn't find it because I didn't know the title. So I was Googling. All I could remember is there was this man on top of this pole. That's all I could remember. And so I was Googling stories about men on top of poles and stuff. And all I kept getting was like these real life things that had happened in America, these flagpole sitters. So there was people that I think as a form of silent protest, just plonked themselves on top of flagpoles. I think that was a real thing. So I guess the story was based on that. I don't know that for sure. I've not researched it that heavily. So yeah, I basically ended up emailing Barbara Henderson, thank you Barbara Henderson, Mick Jackson, thank you Mick Jackson, from my MA course, and they put me out of my misery and told me that it's called The Figure Over the Town. So it's basically this guy who is on top of this small town, America, wakes up one day, there's a bloke just plonked on top of this pole, and to begin with, anything good that they kind of adopt him as a sort of mascot and as a kind of good omen, and anything good that happens they attribute to him, and so they take him food, and they kind of adopt him. But then some bad shit starts to happen, and by the same token, they just turn on him and just blame all the bad shit on him. So it's a bit like a kind of messianic kind of, it's like a Jesus story kind of thing. That's how I read it anyway, but I've had a religious upbringing. It is allegorical, incredibly well written, a little bit, I found it a little bit humorous in places. But yeah, just an absolutely brilliant, if you like an allegorical story, I highly recommend it. I don't know where you'd find it though, I'm sorry. It was in a collection that I read it in, and I'm not sure what the collection was, but it's The Figure Over the Town by William Goyen. I think I did read some of his other stories as well, and liked them, so you could get it in one of his collections if you really want to check it out. Okay, and the last one is quite different. So this is Alice Walker, and it's called Flowers. And it's a very, you can get this online. You can get this from the University of Minnesota online. You can get this story. It's only about 2 pages long. I highly recommend it. It's very moving. I'm getting a bit of a lump in my throat just thinking about it. And this is a story that I sometimes used to use when I taught English. It is a story about a little girl who goes off walking in some, I think it's woods, And she's looking at some flowers. She finds some flowers and she's looking at the flowers. And then underneath the flowers, there is the body. Spoiler. There is the body of a dead slave. So it is thematically, it is about slavery. It's a very powerful, very moving story that is about it's about the fragility of life. So, flowers being very fragile, very delicate, but it's also about the way that, during slavery, the slaves were completely dehumanized, and people being desensitized to their suffering and their death. So yeah, it's a very moving, very powerful, but very, very simple story. It's also a coming of age story, because this little girl, obviously, once she's seen what she sees, she's not really an innocent little girl anymore. So it's it does that, that kind of coming of age, character arc, transformation kind of thing in a very, very short, it's a very concise, short, well plotted little gem of a story that I would, highly, highly, highly recommend. And you can just go and read it for free. So that's my roundup. That's my 5 that I've picked for today anyway. And what I'm now going to do is, and you can just switch off at this point if you want. Don't forget to like and subscribe, obviously, but you can just switch off if you want to now. But I am going to I have written a lot of short stories in my time, and I thought I'd just share with you one of my very short stories. So that's what I'm going to do now, and you can listen or not listen. It's up to you. So the story is called Last Train, and it's based on a true thing that happened when I was commuting to Nottingham on a regular basis to work. This happened a few times where somebody would go and lock themselves in the toilet and refuse to come out. And because they were, trying to dodge paying their fare. So it was a way of just dodging the inspectors. They would hide in the toilet, and the inspectors had got completely clued into this and would evict people from the toilet. And I saw this happen and heard this happen a few times. So this is based on that experience that I had while I was commuting. It's called Last Train. It's very short. The ticket inspector had had enough. No more Mr. Polite Guy. He banged on the door and demanded that the passenger vacate the toilet. A youthful voice replied, "I'm taking a dump," but the inspector wasn't buying it. He threatened to get the emergency key. By this point, the train had stopped and wouldn't be going anywhere until the pot squatter was ejected. Of course, the other passengers all thought it was a bluff. They couldn't do that, could they? What if the lad really was mid-shit? Would being exposed, trousers round ankles, emptying his bowel be just cause to sue the rail network? What if the poor lad was ill? Then again, there was more than a hint of histrionics in his strained overtones. Perhaps the inspector had fallen for this grift too many times before, and the youth was laughing at them all from the comfort of his stainless steel throne. Giving the middle finger to the system, and all the fare-paying fools, tickets in hand, waiting to prove their compliance, extras in a provincial version of Catch Me If You Can. How long would they sit there, one stop from their destination? The first night was the worst. After all, most of the passengers were within a couple of miles from home. Some used their mobiles to set up window-to-window exchanges, urging their loved ones to wave at upstairs windows, but their enthusiasm for the game of I can see you, can you see me wasn't matched by the loved ones who had meals to eat and candlelit baths to soak in and kids to tuck in and virtual worlds to save and sofas to fall asleep on. After a week or so, things settled into a routine. They all took their turn knocking politely on the lavatory door, squatting politely behind the back seats and chatting politely to the driver. They peered through the windows from 8 a.m. to 8:30, Monday to Friday, glued to the gates of the little school as the children went in. At 3:15, they watched them come out again. As the months went by, they started to notice changes in the children. He's getting so tall. The hair's getting darker. You look so pale, my love. And changes in the little town. New houses going up, a new road layout, a shopfront identity crisis on the high street. Their homes, if they could still place them amidst the transformed landscape, had makeovers of their own. New plants in the gardens, new cars on the driveways, new blinds at the windows. Eventually, their view out of the train was obscured by the weeds that sprang up from between the sleepers and the thick layer of moss that built up, spore by single-minded spore, on the rain-spattered windows. So they never saw the new bridge or the parties of school children who came year after year, flowers in hand, to learn the lesson of the boy who wouldn't budge. There you go, one of my stories, one of my very short stories that never got published. No news there. So that's it for this one. Hope you enjoyed me talking about some of my favourite short stories. I'll do another one like this at some point with some more and some perhaps not so many American ones. Let me know in the comments your favourite short stories, if there's something you think I might not have come across and should check out. Please do like and subscribe, and that's it for this time, checking out. So take care and keep reading.